Broadcasting from the north central coast of California and the beautiful Redwoods, the Every Church Flourishing podcast is all about helping churches, leaders, and pastors find health, encouragement, practical advice, soul care, and resources that work together to build up your local fellowship and the broader kingdom of God. Join hosts Pastor Chris Cole and Dr. Chase Thompson from the Great Commission Association, led by Dr. Mike Stewart, as they explore the frontiers of ministry and aim for the goal of making every church flourish.
And welcome into episode number 10 of the Every Church Flourishing podcast by the Great Commission Association of California. Our website is everychurchflourishing.com, and today we have a great roundtable of guests for you, including Great Commission Association Director Dr. Michael Stewart, Seaside, California Pastor Grant Combs, and former missionary pastor and current president of the Great Commission Training Institution, Dr. Chris Smith. And in today's roundtable, we're going to discuss relationships in the church and hit on some really important and deep questions. Can pastors have real friendships with church members? How are deep-rooted friendships made in the church? There's a combination of factors that work together to keep pastors isolated. How can pastors and church leaders guard against that? We're also going to have 10 great resurrection quotes for your Easter sermon coming up this week, and we're going to hear from C.S. Lewis on whether or not our beloved pets go to heaven. Yes, he has an opinion on that, and yes, he actually makes a really profound case that they do. We're also going to be talking about the loneliness epidemic among pastors and church leaders, and about how pastors, generally men, don't admit their problems and pains very easily, and they usually just hero up and pretend like everything is fine when they are actually starved for deep friendships and relationships. And we're going to close out with a delicious soda review. So we had a bit of a technical glitch on our introductions to the roundtable panel today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guests now. The first voice you're going to hear will be Dr. Chris Smith, who, like I said, leads the Great Commission Training Institution, which is a mobile ministry-based school that focuses on training pastors and church leaders in both theology and practical ministry through some really excellent online classes. After that, you're going to hear from Grant Combs, who has pastored Lighthouse Baptist Church in Seaside for the past 11 years and is a 25-year resident of the beautiful Monterey Peninsula. And joining me on this episode and the next as co-host, as you've already heard, is Dr. Michael Stewart, the president of the GCA. And that GCA, Great Commission Association, is a group of nearly 100 Baptist churches that stretch from San Francisco down to Santa Barbara. In other words, from the setting of the detective TV show Monk all the way down to the setting of the detective TV show Psych. And there has been rumors that both Sean Spencer and Adrian Monk come to Dr. Stewart for both crime-fighting advice and other counseling, but honestly, I've been unable to verify those rumors to this point. Maybe we will cover that in a future interview. But for now, let's dive into a very fun but also very revealing roundtable discussion. So right now we have a roundtable, and we're going to talk a little bit about the loneliness epidemic among pastors and church leaders. We're joined by GCA head Dr. Mike Stewart, also Dr. Chris Smith, and Pastor Grant Combs, all from the Central California area. Guys, I have some really alarming statistics that we need to talk through and kind of weigh the implications of. There are approximately, according to the Barna Group, 2/3 of pastors right now, 65%, say that they have significant, regular, ongoing feelings of loneliness and isolation. And that is a big increase just in the last 11 years. In 2015, it was 42%. Now it's 65%. And same thing from 2015 to 2023. The percentage of pastors who feel like they have true friends was at 34% in 2015, and it's now 19% in 2023. So those are scary statistics. Some of that is obviously the pandemic, but there are also, people are saying that even post-pandemic, their loneliness is increasing among church leaders and pastors. What do you guys think explains that?
Part of it is, as a pastor, you are limited in what kind of friends that you can have sometimes, because some pastors, where to even the connection with other pastors, they don't have those relationships. They're very busy and with their family or their church, and it's difficult. It's complicated to have relationships, like close relationships with people within the church. So I think that's a big part of it. So they feel disconnected, they feel lonely because and they're not being in their immediate circle, the people around them, those natural people that you would connect with at like a workplace, it makes it more difficult.
I just think it's a really important topic. I think some of it is expectations. We all kind of start thinking that we are going to like build community in a church and big ideas about connecting. And I use the word family a lot. And the truth is, probably organizationally, the pastor cares about the church a lot more than most of the people that attend the church. And so you say, man, I'm going to pour my whole life into this. And for a large number of people, it's just where they go to church, which is no small thing. It's a really important thing. But as far as like lasting and deep friendships, we don't have a lot of the same avenues that other people have. Dr. Chris, you just mentioned like work friends. Like that's not really a thing. I think that's a big part of it too, is that there's a lot of us that are just alone in our offices. There's not a lot of staff around. There's not a lot of support staff. There's not a lot of peers at work. Everybody around here either volunteers for you or works for you. And so to have peers, it's pretty uncommon. You add that with like, we're so transitory. Like I just think maybe 50 or 100 years ago, you got to shepherd the same people and build relationships over generations. Like you did weddings and dedicated babies and then did funerals for grandma and grandpa. And you really were part of the family where, I think for most of us, even with good, healthy churches, people come and go. And like, there's no faking deep friendship. It takes years to nurture. And, many of us have moved from our hometowns to take church. Oh, I'll follow Jesus anywhere. And that's awesome. And you should. But when you follow Jesus anywhere, your high school friends aren't going to be there. And so I do think a big part of it is we want to be people who make healthy places where people can make friends. But I don't read a lot of chapters in marriage books about friendship. I don't read a lot of chapters in ministry helps about friendship. And the whole thing really has to revolve around, like, do you have some pals? I don't even know if we think about elder boards, deacon boards as, man, these should be friend groups too. You should be connecting at a heart level. And I've said it a lot. Like, it's the one thing that I knew ministry life would be hard. I didn't know that loneliness was going to be part of it. And it absolutely has been. So I don't know that I'm in my 50s now, but I don't know as a mid-20s guy answering a call to ministry, I knew it was going to be answering a call to have some lonely times.
It would seem like a profession that on the surface you deal with people all the time. Yeah. But you're right. It's like water everywhere, not a drop to drink, being out in the middle of the ocean. None of that water is fresh water. So Dr. Stewart, you work as the director of the Great Commission Association. You work with dozens, if not hundreds of pastors. Are you hearing this kind of thing from them? Do they talk to you about loneliness? My sense of pastors is they clam up about those kind of issues. But what about you? Do you hear about this from time to time?
No, I don't think this is not part of most men's makeup to complain about the things that they don't have. They're going to hero up and bear the cross, and this is part of the price. What struck me, Chase, from the statistics, and I think some of the things that have been shared are always been systemically a part of pastoring a group of people, because you love them and you need to lead them, but being vulnerable in front of them, thinking that you can trust them with the real you, that's a risky proposition with a group of people. And what struck me with what you shared was that even with all those things being familiar with ministry like that, there's this huge decline going on. So what's happening in our society? What are we replacing friendship with? From the time that you quoted was 2015 till now, what has dramatically changed in our world that we are substituting friendship for? And I'm going to guess that's got to be, we don't call somebody and say, hey, let's go out to dinner because we're going to watch social media, or we just don't want to mess with people, or friendship takes time. Something that most pastors on Friday night, they're still thinking, we're consumed. Sunday is coming. So I think it's something that God has to start putting inside of us, and older pastors, and it can really be influential to younger pastors. Hey, reach out and be a friend. I was at a retreat with some pastors a few weeks ago, and we were in a prayer. They got us up in prayer circles, and they're from all over the country. And they just said, look, and it wasn't part of the program, look, you need friends. They said this, a successful pastor, you need friends. If there's someone around the table that you felt like talked your language, get their phone number, and when you leave, write it down and call them in a couple of weeks and tell them, I'm praying for you. What's up? And no one took my number, which I was very sad about, but I took somebody else's number, and I'm going to reach out next week. But it's intentionality. And I think also we got to be careful, because we tell ourselves, pastors are very, very giving, serving people, is we tell ourselves that would be me taking. If I reached out and I need a friend, that's for me, and I need to be the friend. That's more of giving. And that might not be what you need right now. You might need some just relaxing with someone who enjoys doing what you do, which is good, wholesome things that you can rejoice with and you like to do together. But there's something happening in the society, and I think I read this trend among all men. All men are more lonely than they've ever been.
I think when we talk about friendships, we need genuine friendships. We need authentic friendship, not just transactional or to get something. And I think in ministry, many times our relationships can become transactional. They are, okay, I'm going to be nice to this person so that I can get something in return. And maybe we don't say that. We probably shouldn't say that, right? But our mind,
I've never said that to you, Chris.
That's good. That's good.
I've never said it out loud, but I apologize right now.
And I think what rolls into this as well is our individualistic culture. As in the United States, we are very individualistic. Other cultures, they're more community-oriented. So I think we just have to be self-aware of these things. And as a pastor, it's even more that we need this more. And we can't just go by, we can't just coast through life in a way that, I don't need friendship. I don't need community, truly loving other people in a way that's in a peer, not that I'm pastoring them but that we're in this ministry together. We're in partnership in ministry together, and we have true friends. I'm part of a group of pastors. It's a local group. They embody this very well. We get together once a month for lunch, and there's not a big agenda. Pray together, get together, talk to each other. But part of that, I've seen that there's just been an openness. A lot of them have been together for many, many years. I've only been part of the group for about 8 years, but many of them is like 20 plus years. And there is an authenticness to the time together, which is what you have to get to as a pastor. And we have to be intentional about it. It just doesn't happen.
Let's talk about that intentionality, because I will just say something reasonably transparent. I came from Alabama, 2018, where I had a very deep circle of friends. Somewhere in the early days of 2018, 2019, I met Pastor Grant at some sort of eating thing, and I knew immediately that he was my kind of guy, that I could hang out with this guy and be friends with him. But our connection points since then, what has that been? Almost 8 years ago, we actually haven't seen each other very much. And that tells me we did have coffee 3-4 weeks ago. It was fantastic. Confirmed what I sort of innately knew. This is a guy that I really could be friends with. But there's a combination of factors, I think, that sort of work together to keep pastors. There's probably other professions like this, but to keep pastors sort of isolated like that. So how can we build intentionality in our lives as pastors? And for you guys, Dr. Stewart and Dr. Smith, you guys sort of more, your work right now is more with pastors as opposed to pastoring. So how can you guys, and how can the Great Commission Association, and how can other associations facilitate those kind of relationships?
You can elevate the issue. That's one of the things an association can do. It can bring things forward for pastors to contemplate and pray about themselves. As you were talking, Chase, I'm thinking, is that a part of my prayer life before God? God, let me find a Jonathan. Let me find a David. Let me find a relationship. Send someone to me that's important to you and important to me in my life. If we're not, and I'm not praying that way, perhaps because I don't see that my greatest need. I have other things that are my greatest need that I think is my greatest need. So I would say we can elevate, but also it's through the ministry we do, through the care ambassadors and other things. We try to create opportunities. You can't make people be friends.
That's
but
right.
You can get them around where they can be friendly. But you also have to teach as, hey, is there somebody in this circle or a circle close to you that you get to be the real you? When you're ticked off about A, B, C, or D, you can pick up the phone and say, I just got to tell somebody that and find out if I'm crazy. And they can hear you say stuff that doesn't have a Bible verse every 3 lines. I can't say that's a high priority, been a high priority for us. We're always talking about the church and the function. We're not really talking about the heart need of the pastor many times.
When you say be the real you, I think that is just something we have to just acknowledge. I mean, we've all kind of been burned going, I think this is a real friend and I'm going to open up. And then you find out that for whatever reason they move, there's some brokenness, you drift apart, whatever it is. And so I think
they taped you for a podcast session that they played for everybody.
Exactly. Thought it was just coffee, Chase. Content's king. What are we going to do? But to have the idea that don't give up, it does take time. And also this is not an all or nothing proposition. I always counsel, especially young men, but there's the number of people that really know your heart. It shouldn't be 0, but it shouldn't be 100 either.
That's true.
Guard your heart. It's okay to say, not everybody in my life, I need to work on being vulnerable, so I'm going to spill my guts at every prayer meeting. No, that's not right either, especially if you're the people's shepherd, you shouldn't burden them with every drop of, sorrow in your heart. At the same time, it shouldn't be nobody that knows the real you. And, we'll probably talk about this relationship in other topics today, but it's got to start with your wife. God gave you, Tiffany and I talk a lot about people are going to come and go in our lives, but God gave us each other for a lifetime. And so you have to have male friendship, but to have that idea that God gave me a best friend, and if I'm not pouring into that relationship, I'm not going to replace that with dudes in the circle once a month. And so it's great to have, you need different levels of friendship. There has to be that most intimate partner in your wife. And then it's great to seek out, and it's not sinful to make the person that you share the most with somebody that doesn't go to your church. In fact, there might be some wisdom to that. And then to say, to have a bullpen of 4 or 5 guys that are life-giving to be around. And then to have the masses that you're friendly with and that you're, stable with is great. But I think to say it's okay that aside from your wife, that best friend kind of person comes and goes. My best friend died when we were 37, and there's no replacing Chad Sluter in my life. It's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean God has abandoned you. There's going to be other people who God brings into your life. And so to just not give up and not be foolish with your heart, not be reckless with your heart, but also not be jaded and too self-centered about it, and say, God will bring people into your life. Go ahead and build those friendships.
That's a good word, to be wise in those relationships, because when you're preaching on Sunday, it's not a therapy session. And so you give illustrations in a way that is wise and good. And I think that Chase, you ask, how do we facilitate these types of relationships? One, we need to be modeling these types of relationships. We need to be having these vulnerable, authentic, real relationships. And I think in our role, we can do a lot of connecting. I remember one pastor I was talking to, and he was struggling. And so we all knew he was struggling. So I called another pastor and I said, could you check on him? Could you call him? Could you include him in this specifically? Can you do these specific things? And he did, and things improved, and just that friendship, but it did take an intentionality and for us to see it. So in our role, we need to be able to see what's happening and just really be sensitive to how the Spirit is moving within a person, a pastor, or a church, and respond accordingly.
Hey, can I ask you guys something? How important is fun in all this? Because I'll tell you what, like, fun is the pathway to intimacy for me, not the other way around. Like, hey, let's get together in somebody's office surrounded by a bunch of books and share our heart is just so much harder for me than playing around a disc golf. And you know what I'm talking about? Like I do think that that's a part of this conversation is that we need to not be afraid to have some fun with others.
I was just about ready to invite you to a deep session at my office, but for friendship. But
that's good.
I'm getting a
It's
sense
time
I
to be
might
friends right now. Now we've got it scheduled for the next half hour.
You will be my friend, or else.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, men like projects. They like things to do and hanging out and getting stuff done. That's what they like. And you know, I agree with you, Grant. It can get serious when it needs to get serious, but there's got to be some relationship building that's enjoyable. Before that, I'm not going to share anything deep with you if I have never spent time with you, and that time is going to be. What? I'm already in books a lot. I'm already in, maybe that's the thing, the idea for pastors and more people. A friend is somebody else I have to get into my life. So we need to relax more. We need to dedicate some Sabbath time to us having a little enjoyment. I think that would helps all the tension to come off because we have a lot of things that we're responsible for. And sometimes they don't go great. And just getting with somebody and having some fun, man, that's a blessing, but it's got to be a rhythm of our life.
Yeah, I think most of the deepest, best conversations, like heart-to-heart kind of conversations I've had with other men haven't been planned. They've been in the middle of something else. And when you talk about connecting, Chris, and that there's no formula to it other than spend enough time that the conversation comes up. Prove yourself trustworthy in small things, and people will learn to trust you in big things.
Good to have a mix of one-on-one, a mix of a smaller situation, 3 or 4, and then the bigger group where it could be like 15 to 20. I think that helps because one, you might not have as many of these type of conversations, but at least you're getting to know other people where in the future you could have those type of conversations. And not everybody's going to be like what Dr. Mike said, not everybody's going to be friends. We can't make them be friends. But if we can cultivate that environment of community, real community, true community, then I believe that it can happen and it does happen.
Pastor Grant, you talked about kind of the issue of fun. On a recent episode of the show, we had Dr. C.J. Wan, who is the Director of Mission Operations for the GCA. And we asked him, not too serious question, what kind of people would you want to go on a cruise with? A group of pastors, a group of denominational leaders, a group of worship leaders. And both he and I, in discussing that question, we're pretty adamant that we probably would not want to go on a cruise with a bunch of pastors. And of course, I am a pastor and he's been a pastor. My sense of most pastors, as a person who did not grow up wanting to be a pastor, I went to church. I didn't dislike pastors, but I thought they were kind of stuffy and serious and, in a sense, not real people. And so I completely resonate with you when you say, hey, I want to connect with somebody on said fun. And Dr. Stewart mentioned projects, and it's interesting. Some guys like to have fun together. Some guys like to do projects together. Most guys don't like to be stuffy together. And I think there's a pressure on pastors sometimes to act as if they are more elevated and holy and godly than they actually are, which kind of brings me to my next question. When I was first starting out in ministry, it was fairly common advice for pastors to either A, avoid being friends, like real friends with people in your congregation, or B, be extremely careful about it. And right now at the moment, Dr. Stewart, you are the interim pastor at First Baptist Gilroy. Pastor Grant, you are pastoring in Seaside. I am pastoring. So beginning with one of you two guys, what do you think about that advice? And do you think pastors should follow it?
I'll go to the guy who's doing it 24/7 first, Grant.
Yeah, I think it just takes wisdom. I think that there's wisdom there. Like a lot of great wisdom, there's tension in the question. I think that it's wisdom to say, "Hey, anything you say over game night can and will be held against you in the quad on Sunday morning." I think you have to know that there's a position that you said yes to be an under shepherd under Christ, that these people are going to call you on the worst day of their year, and they need to know that you have the kind of character and can be serious and trustworthy, so they're comfortable calling you. You are their pastor. There's never a moment where you're not their pastor. That means social media. That means every conversation. You are always their pastor, and you need to act like it. At the same time, I think the other side of that same coin is, look, if you're not vulnerable, if you keep people at arm's length, the number one thing people need to know is that you love them. And you know what I always pray and is, God, give me not just an agape love for this congregation, but I want to like them. Like, I want to be excited when they walk in the room. And you can't really do that as the expert sage on the stage kind of guy. I don't show up for a congregation. I show up for these people. And so, I think when Paul said, man, I've been poured out like a drink offering, I think there was a lot of different kinds of hurt in that being poured out. Oh, that's not just he got old. He's saying, look, my back bears the marks of ministry, and I've been abandoned by people. I mean, so much of his advice to Timothy is, man, you're in a really hard spot. Just don't leave. Just stay there and keep preaching, dude. And so to have that, be wise and guard your heart, and at the same time, have enough vulnerability because I'll tell you the other thing is, if you spend 10 years, like, I think that's the fastest way to a fall, is to just hide who you really are from your congregation.
Absolutely.
You have to be wise. Don't burden them with your struggles and sorrows when it's unnecessary. But, I think maybe 50 years ago, maybe other places in the country, pastors were on pedestals. I don't think I'm on a pedestal. I just don't think that's the way people view their pastor anymore. But they sure do need to know that you're trustworthy. And so to be vulnerable enough where they know the real you, and it's also a reminder. The real you needs to be a godly person.
Amen.
They need to know the real you, and you be somebody that genuinely loves the Lord and has seen victory over sin and is somebody that they would be happy to be their pastor. I think if the problem with vulnerability is that you don't want people to know that you don't really follow the Lord that closely, then selling insurance is a great occupation. Go ahead and do it. So I don't know if that was rambly or answered the question, but I think there has to be wisdom. I think you can't be completely guarded, and I don't think you can be reckless with your heart, but there's wisdom in there somewhere.
That's great. I told our leaders this week, we had a leadership meeting last week, and I gave a bit of a State of the Union address to them. And one of the things I said is, if the people in the church see us get derailed by small things, they will themselves get derailed by even smaller things. Amen. Because they'll say, hey, if it took this leader out, this deacon out, or whatever, it certainly will take me out. Well, Dr. Stewart, you have been interim pastor several times, and before that, you've been involved in church ministry in every facet. What's your take on the whole question? Can pastors be friends, real friends, with people in the congregation?
I would say you can be. To make that decision that you're going to move forward towards a deep friendship with somebody who is a member of your church needs to be one that is prayed through, because they have to be able to handle it. It is what Grant was saying. They're going to be your friend, but you're still their pastor. And so we know this when deep trauma happens to a church family and they tell their pastor all about it, and maybe it's a shame issue or guilt issue. They have a hard time showing back up in church eventually, because when you're preaching and you're teaching about subjects that may touch on the fabric of their issue, they can't discern whether you mean them or that you mean the sin. I'm going to say there's a difference between us loving our people deeply and becoming best friends with them. And I think what they want, they want you to love them deeply. I will say this as a director of missions. I have pastors, it's part of my ministry position, when they're discouraged and thinking about ending their ministry with the congregation. Many times I will get a call and they want to talk about it. Kind of like when a pastor gets marriage counseling, someone calls, we want marriage counseling. The chances of you coming in time are, minimal. I have a stock question for them, and this is just me. I will listen to everything they want to say because they come to talk and they unburden about, and they're hurt. And things have happened that in all legitimacy, they should be hurt. Things have gone down, things have happened. And they will get through, and I let them finish, and I will tell them, that's a lot. You're dealing with a lot. My question for you, brother, is do you still love them? Do you still love them, or you don't even like them anymore? Because if you still love them, there's a path for you here. And you are the one that's in charge of what happens next in this church as far as regards to the office of pastor. Because all these things you've talked about, God is dealing and working in the midst of that. Sometimes staying when you're hurt is an incredible testimony to the church that they stay through things. They stay in their marriage when they're hurt. They stay with their kids when they're hurt. And they see, they're always watching. The church family is always, and they know more about who's hurting you and what's hurting you than you think. Because people talk outside your presence. And they watch you, how you engage with the person they know who is gossiping about you the most. They watch you and they see whether grace comes out or the opposite of that. And only through Christ can we give him glory about how we recognize this person in front of me, they're hurting. The person who's gossiping, it's like, there's something broken, but I don't have to be broken. And I don't have to hurt them. If I do have a close friend in the church, I would certainly also have a close friend, even outside the church, but maybe outside of my circle of Southern Baptist leaders. I would have someone who wasn't in our power circle or whatever. Those are healthy pastors, and they won't spend time talking to you about denominational politics, which doesn't get anybody anywhere. How am I going to pastor my church better? Well, let's first talk about the denominational. Why? We have a meeting every year. We get to go do that. So I would just say that, be wise about it. You can. I was counseled that way. And our wives are the ones who actually build deeper relationships. And they have to have wisdom too. We don't normally tell them that, but I just think women have a much more, my God, an affinity to draw into close relationships. They do it easier and faster, most of them. But even then, they're your wife. They're the pastor's wife. And they'll get hurt, deeply hurt, if they're betrayed. And so we have to help them and how we navigate that, because it's fuzzy. When you get up to that line of love and friendship, now I'm going to cross over into deep friendship. That's a fuzzy line. And once you cross over it, and that comes with, I think, with the sharing that this happened in my marriage or this happened with my kids, something personal is shared, and then you've crossed over. And you got to wait for the other person to respond back. And, well, that's great, Mike. What about the weather? Yeah, well, it's really hot today. All right. Oops. So I would say just be wise. But if you have one that's inside the church, be careful with them. They still need you to be your pastor. And I would say this to close. I've had a great life among God's people, but I think they really want to be proud of you, proud of their pastor. They want to say, that's my pastor. Not that's Jesus. No, that's my pastor, and I'm proud of him. And they will do that if they see us walking among them, even when we have the stripes on our back and we've been wounded, but we still go up and we're filled up with God's care, God's joy for our people, and we still love them. So that's my take.
That is an excellent and weighty observation. Okay, I think that's a good place to end part one of the roundtable interview for now. Never fear, there's at least that much more coming up next week with the same panel, and we'll go even deeper in our discussion of relationships in the church. For now, let's transition to a soda review of an excellent beverage that Dr. Stewart and I happen to agree on. One of the special things, I think it's special, unique things we do on the Every Church Flourishing podcast is we get a rare, unique, strange, sometimes foreign, sometimes domestic soda from our showrunner, Miss Grace, and we review it on the show. And today we have a soda I've never heard of before. This is a German soda called Spezi, and it is a cola and juicy orange soda, which is very popular over there. Dr. Stewart, have you ever had a soda that's a combination of cola and orange?
No, I don't believe
Nor
I have.
I. It's a very unique kind of deal. I grew up on Orange Crush and sodas like that with an orange flavor, but I've never had a combo orange and cola. And when I read the title, Spetsy, I sort of think of the Spetsnaz, the Russian special forces, or the Stasi, which is not such a good thing to think of. But what it means, this is a word, and you see it there at the top. It says friend for life. Spetsy is the Bavarian word for buddy. So I guess this is a drink that friends and buddies should drink. So we're going to drink it as friends and buddies and then tell you what we think about it. You ready? All right. Not bad. What do you think, Dr. Stewart?
Yeah, not bad. It says cola and juicy orange, which
Juicy orange.
I'm glad they, it was a juicy orange that they used, but let me try it again.
I definitely get the citrusy flavor there.
Yeah, it is not bad. It's got 5-star German quality, it says on the bottom.
Well, hey, 5-star German quality.
So you drink this while you're driving your Mercedes down the Autobahn with your Spetsnaz, sniper rifle in the back. Friend for life. Actually, it's pretty good soda, not bad. Reminds me of something else that they have in Europe. What's that? I can't remember the name of it, but it's I've seen them. But anyway, I would say I would give that a 4.5.
I think I would agree. I could drink this. I could drink this a lot. It tastes a little like somebody poured some juice in my Coke, but I think it tastes better than that. It's good. It's smooth. It's tasty. I would say, if I could give it one word, I would say refreshing. This is a refreshing beverage.
Yeah. Now I'm not drinking. I think this over a glass of ice.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely chilled would be really refreshing. Of course, this is not a American-sized bottle.
No.
This is probably says it's a
8 ounces,
0.25.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
yeah, it's a quarter of a liter, I guess.
I don't know, but thank you, Grace, for picking one that was very delightful. So if you ever see Spetsy, or you can just say that to your pastor friends. Hey, Spetsy.
That's right,
buddy. We've not only refreshed, we've educated on this episode, Chase. So
that's important. That's important. And I'm going to agree with you. A rare concurrence and confluence. I'm going to say my Spetsy also worth 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5 Spurgeons. This is tasty. It's got full sugar. It's probably got a lot of calories, but I would drink this every day and be a happy camper. Okay, now that we are refreshed, we want to close out with some great quotes that you can use in your Resurrection Sunday sermon this upcoming week, or Sunday school, or post on your blog, or whatever. I've picked out 10 great quotes from various church leaders on the resurrection of Jesus, and most of these are not super well known. I wouldn't say they're exactly obscure or anything like that, but these are not the normal ones you read. So we'll start out with John Piper from God is the Gospel, who says in the number 1 slot, the best news of the Christian gospel is that the supremely glorious creator of the universe has acted in Jesus Christ's death and resurrection to remove every obstacle between us and himself, so that we may find everlasting joy in seeing and savoring his infinite beauty. Number 2, from C.S. Lewis in the book Miracles. In the earliest days of Christianity, an apostle was first and foremost a man who claimed to be an eyewitness of the resurrection. As this qualification suggests, to preach Christianity meant primarily to preach the resurrection. The resurrection is the central theme in every Christian sermon reported in the book of Acts. The resurrection and its consequences were the gospel, or good news, which the Christians brought. Number 3, Tim Keller from his excellent apologetics book, The Reason for God. If Jesus rose from the dead, then you have to accept all that he said. If he didn't rise from the dead, then why worry about any of what he said? The issue on which everything hangs is not whether or not you like his teaching, but whether or not he rose from the dead. Number 4, my guy, Charles Spurgeon. Christianity stands or falls with the resurrection of its founder. No man can be a Christian and doubt the resurrection of the Lord. If that had not happened, the whole matter would have been proved an imposture. Number 5, H.B. Charles from his sermon, Case Closed. Ephesians 1:20-21 says, God raised Jesus from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in the one to come. The one who died on the cross and rose from the dead is now seated at the right hand of God. Psalm 110 verse 1 reads, The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The Christ of the empty tomb is the Christ of the occupied throne. Next, another Spurgeon quote, who says, the whole system of Christianity rests upon the fact that Christ is risen from the dead. For if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain. Ye are yet in your sins. The divinity of Christ finds its surest proof in his resurrection, since he was declared to be the Son of God with power, according to the Spirit of holiness, by the resurrection from the dead. It would not be unreasonable to doubt his deity if he had not risen. Our justification, that choice blessing of the covenant, is linked with Christ's triumphant victory over death and the grave, for he was delivered up for our offenses and was raised again for our justification. And most certainly, our ultimate resurrection rests here, for if the Spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Spirit that dwelleth in you. If Christ be not risen, then we shall not rise. But if he be risen, then they who are asleep in Christ have not perished, but in their flesh shall surely behold their God. Thus the silver thread of resurrection runs through all the believer's blessings from his regeneration onwards to his eternal glory and binds them all together. Number 7, G.K. Chesterton, who wrote, Jesus' resurrection is the ground and basis of all true love, hope, and joy. For if Jesus is still in the grave, then all of humanity will remain in the grave too. But he is not in the grave, and this makes all the difference. Number 8, Charles Colson, he says, I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me. How? Because 12 men testified they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, tortured, stoned, and put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible. Number 9, Charles Spurgeon again. Now, soul, if thou would be saved, before all things it is necessary that thou should trust thy soul in the hands of God, the faithful Creator, beholding ever associated with those hands the Lord Jesus Christ, God and man, who has died and risen again to put away thy sin. Such a faith now exercised will save thee at once and will save thee forever and ever. That's from Spurgeon's sermon, The Two Pillars of Salvation, which he preached in 1894. And number 10, from D.A. Carson. The entire Bible pivots on one weekend in Jerusalem about 2,000 years ago. Attempts to make sense of the Bible that do not give prolonged thought to integrating the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus are doomed to failure, at best exercises in irrelevance. Well, let me give you one more bonus because it was too good not to include. This is number 11 from Yaroslav Pelikan, who says, if Christ is not risen, nothing else matters. And if Christ is risen, nothing else matters. That's one you can ponder on for the rest of the afternoon. As promised at the beginning, let's talk a little bit about the question that as a pastor, I'm asked all the time. Do dogs go to heaven? Will my pet be in heaven? Will my kitty cat, my hamster, my dog that died, our dog that died, little Cooper, he died a few years ago. He was way too young. It broke our hearts. Will such beasts somehow, some way make it into heaven? It's a great question, and I've always answered it in part by pointing to the fact that many resurrection passages in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, do indeed mention animals in the resurrection. Does that mean animals will be resurrected? Now, obviously, I don't know the answer to that question, but C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Problem of Pain, gives a very thoughtful answer to the question. And look, let me just be straight with you. It's pretty deep. You're probably going to want to listen to this and then come read it. And I will have it included in total at our website, everychurchflourishing.com, in the episode 10 show notes. But this is what Lewis himself says about the question. It's deep, like I said, so think. Man was appointed by God to have dominion over the beasts, and everything a man does to an animal is either a lawful exercise or a sacrilegious abuse of an authority by divine right. The tame animal is therefore, in the deepest sense, the only natural animal, the only one we see occupying the place it was made to occupy, and it is on the tame animal that we must base all our doctrine of beasts. Now, it will be seen that insofar as the tame animal has a real self or personality, it owes this almost entirely to its master. If a good sheepdog seems almost human, that is because a good shepherd has made it so. I've already noted, says Lewis, the mysterious force of the word in, I-N. I do not take all the senses of it in the New Testament to be identical, so that man is in Christ, and Christ in God, and the Holy Spirit in the church, and also in the individual believer in exactly the same sense. They may be senses that rhyme or correspond rather than a single sense. I'm now going to suggest, says Lewis, though with great readiness to be set right by real theologians, that there may be a sense corresponding, though not identical with these, in which those beasts that attain a real self are in their masters. That is to say, you must not think of a beast by itself and call that a personality and then inquire whether God will raise and bless that. You must take the whole context in which the beast acquires its selfhood, mainly the good man and the good wife ruling their children and their beasts in their good homestead. That whole context may be regarded as a body in the Pauline or a closely sub-Pauline sense, and how much of that body may be raised with the good man and the good wife, who can predict? So much, presumably, as is necessary, not only for the glory of God and the beatitude of the human pair, but for that particular glory and that particular beatitude which is eternally colored by that particular terrestrial experience. And in this way, it seems to me possible that certain animals may have an immortality not in themselves, says Lewis, but in the immortality of their masters. And the difficulty about personal identity in a creature barely personal disappears when the creature is thus kept in its proper context. If you ask concerning an animal thus raised as a member of the whole body of the homestead, where its personal identity resides, I answer, where its identity always did reside, even in the earthly life, in its relation to the body, and specially to the master who is the head of that body. In other words, the man will know his dog, the dog will know its master, and in knowing him will be itself. Now look, that's pretty deep and worth exploring. Basically, I think what Lewis is saying is that the personality of dogs, other pets as well, are echoes of their master. And in a sense, and many of us who have had pets have felt this, the dogs, cats, beloved animals are part of themselves in some ways. And Lewis is saying, in a Pauline sense of understanding of the body, not merely being the human body, but perhaps other things attached to it, might not animals be also considered to be part of the body that will be resurrected? I'm not sure Lewis is right, and he himself said, I'm not sure I'm right. But I will say that in answering that question, I've never really considered that perspective before, and it's pretty deep and it's pretty fascinating. What do you think? Will God resurrect beloved pets? I'd love to hear from you, and you can reach us through our website, either by recording a voicemail or sending a message. Our website is everychurchflourishing.com. That's everychurchflourishing.com. Please do leave us a message, weigh in. We'll read your responses on the air, so to speak. And if you have a chance, run on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We will see you next week when we will have part 2 of our roundtable, and we've got lots more great episodes coming up to look forward to. Thanks for listening. Good day to you, and Godspeed.